Since we're a little bit past the starting time, I'm just gonna start. But yeah, te she Rebekah Chattin the Bethlehem in Nishle, Nash Tejadine e Bashashin, Hanagathni Dashache, Bilagana Dashanale. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to be here today. We want to respect everyone's time because we know you all are busy. So let's just jump straight into it. So today, we will review the findings from the report Pathways Forward 2024 Perspectives from Native Leadership on the Colorado Plateau and explain how the leaders' suggestions will drive CPF's work going forward. We also plan to announce our refreshed priority areas and have some time for Q&A. So please feel free to leave your questions in the chat at any time, and we will address them going forward and during that Q&A time. But I wanted to start by highlighting CPF's mission and giving some background, but our mission is to invest in the people and initiatives that sustain the lands, waters, and cultures of the Colorado Plateau. And this will always guide our work here in CPF. But just some background, and in 2010, CPF brought together plateau leaders to define the foundation's priority areas. The priority areas defined by the leaders from that gathering were the protection of water, protection of sacred places, preservation of languages, and community health. And in 2014, due to a large number of recommendations, the community health priority area was changed to sustainable community-based agriculture. At that time, the foundation was still in its infancy and emerging into the philanthropic space. But now, over a decade later, in 2024, CPF brought together plateau leaders again to listen and learn about the challenges and opportunities that had emerged over that period. For CPF to serve the plateau communities in ways that work for them, we have to intentionally listen and learn from those we serve. Today, I wanted to share the process of bringing together the leaders for the summits, what we heard in those conversations, and how we are applying what we learned to our work at CPF. If you haven't read the report yet, I encourage anyone interested in more insight into the plateau and CPF's work to read it. On screen, you will find a QR code that links directly to that report. But starting with the Leaders Summit and kind of going back to highlighting the process for that summit, and that started with staff discussing the qualities of leadership we wanted to seek out for this process, rather than discussing who we wanted to have in these conversations or having like already individuals in mind. So these conversations went back and forth on how we define leadership, whether we include emerging leaders, whether we have a separate conversation with youth, like, etc. An important distinction in this process was identifying the leaders who the communities felt truly represented them, rather than the usual suspects such as tribal leaders or federal government officials who are usually called upon in traditional or mainstream spaces. With that distinction in mind, we put together qualities we felt would help identify leaders who have a passion for the plateau and can think strategically about the work happening. These qualities include tapping emerging and established leaders, those based on the plateau, community connection and local knowledge, cultural competency, strategic insight, vision for impact, team orientation, and a passion for the plateau and solving its complex issues. Once we identified these qualities, I created a Google form to collect nominations, and we circulated that through our channels, which included the public, our grantees, partners, board members, and those who are interested in CPF's work. From that process, the community nominated 29 potential leaders, and we engaged 21 leaders who were interested in participating. Of the 21 leaders who participated in the summits, 95% were from plateau tribes, while 5% were from outside the plateau, but had a long demonstrated history of working with a specific plateau tribe. The tribal communities represented in these conversations included Havasupai, Hopi, Hualapai, Laguna, Navajo, Ute Mountain Ute, White Mountain Apache, and Zuni. Additionally, About 24% of the leaders uh, were considered emerging leaders, so the people between the ages of 16 and 27, and about 67% of the leaders were women. The leaders in these conversations were a mix of current and past grantees, people familiar with our work, and those with little to no knowledge of CPF. Finally, the leaders ranged and represented a number of expertise and passions, spanning work with youth, philanthropy, culture, economics, law, environment, policy, education, advocacy, health, women's leadership, agriculture, and food sovereignty, whatever it is, you name it. Each leader took part in either an online one-on-one conversation or focus group, or they were part of our in-person leader summit in Flagstaff that happened in June 2024. And all of the leaders were compensated for their time. But now I want to jump into the conversation process and highlight what we discussed. So during the conversations, we aim to understand the challenges that have arisen on the plateau since 2010 or that last gathering, some of the opportunities leaders felt were important to highlight, and the strengths the plateau has that people outside of our communities might not recognize. And finally, the potential partnerships leaders felt would be useful in advancing the plateau's greatest needs. These goals help shape our questions and lay the groundwork for organizing leaders' responses. We asked 3 questions that would reflect the goals and include: what are the most significant needs facing communities across the plateau and why? What are some of the key strengths and resources that communities can build upon and why? And who are possible partners that CPF can reasonably and efficiently leverage to help advance the plateau's greatest needs? We wanted to keep the questions broad so the leaders had the freedom to discuss topics they felt were most important. For the in-person summit, we worked with a consultant, Vicki Oldman, who helped us shape the conversations, keep things moving forward, and helped us reflect on what we shared. For the online conversation, I worked with another consultant, Daryl Melvin, to help shape the online conversations I had either one-on-one or in a focus group setting. The conversation process lasted about 2 months and resulted in hours of conversations regarding the plateau. From that point, I worked to transcribe the conversations with leaders, pull their responses into the respective data containers for plateau challenges, strengths, and opportunities, and partnerships, and organize them by frequency of discussion. After organizing and distilling the conversations, we collected over 284 responses from leaders overall, and 133 fell within those plateau challenges container, 58 fell in the plateau opportunities container, 56 in the plateau strengths, and 37 in the plateau partnerships. Each data container had a number of discussion topics as shown in the chart on screen. This chart helps visualize kind of the process of collecting and distilling the leaders' responses, and each discussion topic raised by leaders is outlined and further defined in the report. Overall, much of what leaders shared was a concern for the plateau and a passion for what the future could bring. In the plateau challenges data container, they highlighted issues surrounding culture, environment, intergenerational topics, and access. Regarding challenges related to culture, they encompass concerns about cultural practices eroding and not being passed down to the next generation, whether that is present in our languages, ceremonies, or even cultural practices like planting. Many leaders were worried that we would eventually lose our cultural knowledge. Regarding the environment, many leaders shared several environmental issues specific to the plateau region. This included the heat and desertification of the plateau, exacerbated by climate change, the ongoing effects of uranium mining, and the continued need to steward the environment, not just through a farming approach, but through an entire ecosystem approach. In addition to concerns from leaders about the transmission of cultural knowledge from one generation to the next, leaders also shared that intergenerational topics need to be addressed more broadly. Many leaders expressed concern concerns about the strain on intergenerational knowledge sharing as they are ready to mentor younger generations who are emerging into leadership but have limited opportunities to do so. On the other hand, younger generations are frustrated that established leaders make decisions without their involvement, which can potentially harm their futures. Finally, leaders emphasized the need for access to a variety of resources, which included water, sacred places, infrastructure, broadband, cultural items, food, etc. Leaders shared that because we don't have access to many basic resources, this creates challenges in addressing issues that other communities off the plateau do not face. In the Plateau Opportunities container, leaders discuss local talent, communication, and intergenerational topics. And overwhelmingly, leaders reinforce the importance of tapping into the local communities as an opportunity. The Plateau Native communities have a number of local experts who may not have formal education, leaders who can rally their communities and unrecognized talent and passion that emerge from tapping into these same communities. Regarding communication, leaders noted that it is a key opportunity to attract resources and allies, focusing on communications that share the positives of the plateau and the hard work the communities are doing to improve the region, rather than a deficit narrative that is commonly shared. Finally, although leaders shared their challenges related to intergenerational topics, they also noted untapped opportunities to bring together people from different generations and create spaces for intergenerational knowledge sharing. This includes not only creating informal opportunities, but also opportunities for younger generations to be a part of decision-making processes that usually rely on the established leaders from older generations. Finally, in the plateau strengths, leaders frequently discussed community, culture, and knowledge, specifically Native traditional knowledge and modern education, as some strengths. In the conversations, leaders continually reinforced that plateau communities have untapped strengths when they come together, stewarding leaders from within their communities and standing together on challenges that arise. While leaders shared that cultural loss is a challenge we face, they also emphasize that our cultures are one of their greatest strengths. Returning to cultural traditions, practices, languages, and knowledge helps bridge an intergenerational gap, teaches us to steward and care for the land, and serves as a blueprint for how we live our everyday lives. And tapping into our local communities and uplifting our cultures, leaders also shared that individuals with Native traditional knowledge and or that modern education are an untapped strength as they understand our traditions and the current systems we operate in today. They emphasize that it is important to uplift these individuals in our communities rather than outsourcing that knowledge through outside non-Native sources. On screen, you'll see some of the direct quotes from the plateau leaders regarding strengths, opportunities, and challenges. These are just a small handful of things leaders discussed during our conversation process. Another note regarding the plateau partnerships, we received 37 suggestions from leaders with whom CPF can partner in a reasonable and effective way to address the plateau's needs. And we recognize that we cannot do this work alone, which motivated the creation of my role and the program of strategies and partnerships here at CPF. We collected these responses and have asked the same question to our grantees, staff, and other stakeholders that is contributing to the creation of a power map of the plateau. This power map will help guide CPF's approach to partnerships, and we hope it can be a resource for those interested in working with others on the plateau. The power mapping process is ongoing, and we look forward to the strategy and partnership opportunities that will emerge from the community's suggestions. But now I want to transition to kind of how we took these findings and how we're applying them to our work. We reflected our organization on what we heard from the leaders and how we should move forward. Overwhelmingly, the leaders affirmed CPF's previous priority areas of protection of water, protection of sacred places, preservation of languages, and sustainable community-based agriculture. However, leaders acknowledged that while these are important areas to focus on, they could be evolved or expanded to address other issues they felt were also important and have arisen in the past decade. This includes things like addressing the impacts of climate change, the loss of culture, not just our languages, thinking of foodways as a system rather than just focusing on agriculture, and finally supporting the Native leaders on the plateau more than ever. Once I had compiled all of these findings from my conversations, I approached the staff to discuss how the foundation could move forward based on their feedback. This process took on a number of conversations, whether as a whole or one on one with different areas of the organization. These discussions drew on the leaders' insights from the summit, our interactions with grantees and community members over the years, and the lived experiences of the majority of our staff who are from a number of the Plateau Native communities. This helped guide the refresh of our priority areas to meet the needs of the Plateau communities. This process reinforced the importance of our mantra of we live where we serve and helped us understand how CPF fits into the web of plateau communities and how we can continue to serve those within it. This process involved many hard conversations and required us to examine how these refreshed priority areas would impact our work. And before I go into more detail about the priority areas, I wanted to emphasize that staff and leaders made it clear that we should not stop supporting the previous priority areas, again, of protection of water, protection of sacred places, preservation of languages, and sustainable community-based agriculture. The leaders and CPF staff both agreed that our priority areas should be refreshed to meet the needs of the community. So we want to continue thinking of the priority areas as a refresh and a wider net cast to better support the needs of these same communities. So without further delay, CPF's refresh priority areas include culture. Culture is at the heart of Native identity and belonging, and cultural preservation is essential for future generations. We support initiatives rooted in Colorado Plateau Native cultures that reinforce the intergenerational transmission of language, traditional arts, and preservation, as well as efforts to acquire and maintain access to sacred places. So that's where that preservation of languages and protection of sacred places priority areas will be tucked under. Next is environmental stewardship, which is the responsibility to care for land, water, plants, and animals as living relatives, and to sustain nature's balance, which has been made vulnerable by climate change. We support initiatives that meet this responsibility through hands-on, on-the-ground work that elevates tribal voices and safeguards the Colorado Plateau for generations to come. This is where that protection of water priority area is going to be tucked under. Next is community foodways, which center on the needs of both food producers and consumers to create regional Colorado Plateau food systems that are sustainably developed, ensuring healthy, secure food for Plateau communities. We support sustainable community-based agriculture and native food system knowledge holders, all of whom provide healthy foods that contribute to community food sovereignty. And this is where we're going to see that sustainable community-based agriculture priority area tucked under. And finally, the more newer priority area is leadership innovation. Empowered leadership enhances organizational frameworks and enriches community potential. We support Native-led organizations that cultivate Native leadership at the organizational and community levels on the Colorado Plateau through mentorship and knowledge sharing to develop and retain future community leaders. So you think of things like leadership programs or capacity building initiatives. But these are CPF's refresh priority areas. And moving forward, these will guide our work in communications, strategies, partnerships, and grant making work. These priority areas help establish the guardrails we follow as an organization, keeping us from being pulled into work we cannot commit to or complete on our own. So, our goal is to always work for the communities we serve, and that includes taking the time to listen, strategize, and move forward based on what we learned. A few things people should be expecting moving forward include the refreshed priority areas, which will take effect in August when we announce the opening of our 2026 grant cycle. We will update our website to reflect the new priority areas and to make the language more transparent. If you haven't already, you can sign up for our MailChimp list to receive updates from CPF, including when that grant announcement goes out or when any changes happen on our website. With that, I invite people to leave any questions in the chat. Um, our own Elizabeth Freeman will assist in asking us the questions you all have. So, yeah, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them right now. And Jim, do you have anything to share?
No, I think you've done a fantastic job introducing this, Rebecca. We're all standing by for any questions.
Of course. Also, thank you for all the support that's coming in the comments. But if anyone, how many years can an organization apply? Jim, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question because we've asked that as well. Um, I think we all know that some organizations that we have supported over the years since 2012, and by the way, we've supported over 150 native-led initiatives on the Colorado Plateau over the years. We've supported some from the very beginning. And uh, at that time, we just received maybe 8 to 10 applications. Now we're receiving many, many, many more than that. And we have a limited amount of monies that we can give. So the question does come up. It's like, how many years do we support an organization? Maybe some organizations graduate out. Maybe some build their capacity where they outgrow the amounts that we can give. And they get to a point where they move on to seeking larger donations or support from larger foundations or individuals. Um, to really answer that question, really is that's what we've been thinking is how long? We don't have an answer yet, but I'll tell you that right now we're going through some discussions about that. Uh, we believe that we can always support an organization in perpetuity through communications work, through partnerships, sometimes with strategies, all of those sort of things. So it doesn't always have to be about grants. Grants is going to be a question. We'll wonder about that, but we'll always be partners, thought partners, and the rest.
Thanks, Jim. Rebecca, there's another question here from Celeste, and she's wondering if you can repeat when the grants will open.
Yeah, so we're shooting for August for the grant cycle to open, and that's when we'll also re-announce the priority areas and anything grantees need to kind of foresee for that grant process. Are there
And then
any
we
other
have another
questions?
questions from Isabel. She's wondering, how can we collectively honor our ancestral relationship with the stars and connection to Indigenous lifeways on Earth? Do you have any initiatives specific to nurturing our sky world relationships?
I don't believe we have any specific initiatives that will be supporting that, but I believe that if you have any initiatives related to culture, and that sounds like that falls into the cultural category, we would be happy to review that and see what we can do for the grant cycle. Jim, do you have any insight into that question?
I think you mostly answered that, Rebecca. When the announcements go out, when we launch the grant cycle, you will see the the application process, the eligibility and application process, and what we fund more specifically. So look for that no later than around July. I mean, it's going to be important for you to look at what we support and whether that is a good fit for you. Uh, because the applications will be reviewed by the entire team to see if they are a fit.
Thanks, Jim. There's two more questions so far. Here's another one from Denise. She's asking, is there a role for non-native partners and how can they best support our initiatives?
Yeah, we're always open to working with non-native people because of course we know that we can't do this ourselves. So we need the support that comes in. So if you would like to talk about partnerships further or kind of what you're envisioning with your organization, I'd be happy to discuss anything one-on-one or with Jim. So please reach out to us and let us know what you're thinking of, and we can go from there.
Okay, I see a question from Sierra, but first I'm going to read a question from Ed. He says, we are revitalizing farmlands in the Navajo Nation. Are we able to partner to increase and strengthen our community foodways? Can LLCs partner?
Yeah, so again, we're always open to seeing what partnership opportunities there are, and the revitalization of the farmlands on Navajo Nation falls completely within the Community Foodways initiative. So we're happy to kind of work and see what comes out of that. As far as LLCs go, unfortunately, we don't have funding for LLCs. We only fund nonprofits, but we're happy to partner with LLCs and see kind of where that goes. So again, I encourage people to reach out to me, reach out to CPF in general to see what partnership opportunities there are and to have more discussions regarding your ideas as well.
Okay, this last question is from Sierra. She's wondering, what would your most ideal grantee look like? What are the qualifications, most ideal budgets, and CPF interest projects?
Yeah, so I think you can find our eligibility criteria on our website. And again, we'll be updating our website here before our grant cycle launch. So please stay in touch, enroll in our MailChimp so that all of our updates can go out to you all. But Jim, do you have any other comments regarding that question?
Yeah, Kiara, I think it's a good question. We're always careful about to be non-prescriptive, right? Yeah, these will be your ideas and your ideas alone that will come to us as applications. We wouldn't want to say you have a better chance if you do this, or that, just to be egalitarian and fair to everyone, that we won't say that you ought to word it this way or the better way to do it is this way. That's really up to you. We don't want to influence how you shape your ideas and put your proposals together.
Awesome. Are there any more questions, Liz?
Nope, there's no more questions. It looks like Shannon is thanking us for highlighting the program photos in the slideshow, and they are excited to see what's going to come next. I also added the CPF grant eligibility link in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, thank you, Shannon. Those are really beautiful photos. So I just was excited to highlight them in our presentation. But if there aren't any more questions, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend today's webinar. This webinar is recorded, so we will upload that to our YouTube channel. If you have any colleagues or who weren't able to join today or want to rewatch for anything you may have missed, that will exist in our YouTube channel. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to have a conversation. I also encourage people to keep in touch again by subscribing to our MailChimp list, which sends updates on everything that's happening here at CPF. But again, ahiya na tago and have a good rest of your day, everyone.